It was supposed to be a simple anniversary dinner, nothing extravagant. David and I had been together for almost 6 years, and like most couples, we had our ups and downs. But on that night, I felt a strange mix of nostalgia and frustration. Our relationship had been teetering on the edge for some time. Small arguments, silent treatments, and unmet expectations had become the rhythm of our everyday lives. But we were still trying, or at least I thought we were. The evening started like any other, a nice bottle of wine, a few candles lit on the table, and a playlist of our favorite songs humming softly in the background. We were having a quiet dinner at home, just the two of us. It had been a while since we'd shared a moment like this. We sat across from each other, chatting about work, the weather, and the things we used to talk about when we were first dating. It felt somewhat familiar, but not in the way it used to. There was a lingering tension in the air, an unspoken distance between us. As the night wore on, I found myself becoming more and more intoxicated, not just from the wine, but from the feelings I had buried deep inside. I couldn't remember the last time I had truly felt seen by David, or the last time I had felt heard. There was so much I wanted to say, but I held it in. Sometimes, when I'm a little tipsy, my thoughts spill out without my control. And that's when it happened. I had been talking about something trivial, maybe about the way our old friends had been treating us or something that happened at work, but I couldn't help but make a passing comment about my ex. He was better at handling stressful situations, I said, almost absent-mindedly. It wasn't meant to be an insult, just an offhand remark. He knew how to deal with me when things got tough. David's face immediately changed. He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth, and his eyes locked onto mine. There was a brief moment of silence, a long pause that seemed to stretch out forever. I couldn't read his expression. His face was a mixture of confusion and hurt, but mostly something I couldn't place. The words I had spoken hung in the air like a cloud, slowly suffocating the moment we were trying to share. "What did you just say?" David finally asked, his voice low but sharp, almost dangerous. I laughed, trying to lighten the mood, to brush it off. "It was a joke, David. Just a stupid joke. Nothing serious." But it wasn't funny. I saw it in his eyes. He didn't find it funny. He didn't laugh. Instead, he slowly stood up from the table, his chair scraping against the floor, the sound piercing through the silence that had settled between us. "I can't do this," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "I don't need to sit here and listen to this." And just like that, he left. He didn't say anything else. He didn't look back. He didn't even grab his coat. He simply walked out the door, leaving me sitting there in a mixture of shock and regret. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt the weight of my words pressing down on me. I hadn't meant to hurt him. I hadn't meant to say anything that would make him feel inferior or unworthy. But I had. And now, I didn't know how to fix it. The next few days were a blur. I don't remember much of what happened after David left that night. It was as if everything around me slowed down, and I was trapped in a world that didn't make sense anymore. I kept replaying that moment in my head over and over, as if somehow, if I thought about it enough, I could understand what went wrong. But the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. David didn't come home that night, and he didn't call. The bed felt cold without him beside me. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my words pressing down on me. I never meant for him to walk out. I never meant for that one offhand comment to push him away. But that's exactly what I had done, and now he was gone. I wasn't sure where he had gone, or if he was even coming back. The silence between us was deafening. My phone remained silent for days. I sent texts, each one more desperate than the last, but there was nothing. No reply. No acknowledgement. I called him a few times, hoping that somehow he'd pick up and tell me everything was okay, that we could laugh about it later, and that we could just move past it. But he never answered. I started to feel like I was losing my grip on reality. I would look at my phone every few minutes, hoping for some sort of notification, some sign that David was okay, or at least that he was willing to talk to me. But the silence stretched on. It felt like I was being punished for something I didn't mean to do. Every time I checked my phone and saw no messages, no missed calls, it felt like a dagger in my chest. The days turned into a routine of empty hours. I went to work, but I couldn't focus. I tried to carry on with my life, but everything felt pointless. David wasn't there. The person who had been my partner for years, the person I had shared my life with, was gone, and I didn't know how to fix it. I thought back to the time when we first met, how effortless everything had seemed. We had been in love, or at least, I thought we were. But somewhere along the way, things had changed. We had changed. The love we had for each other had been replaced by resentment, misunderstandings, and routine. We had stopped talking about the things that mattered. We had stopped talking at all. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about one comment. This wasn't just about the joke I made. It was about everything we had let slip between the cracks. My frustration had been building for months, and I hadn't said anything. I had let it fester, and now it was all spilling out, but not in the way I wanted. It was too late to take it back. I sat in the quiet of our apartment, the emptiness swallowing me whole. The regret was suffocating. I couldn't believe I had let something so small, so trivial, destroy what we had built together. I didn't know how to fix it. And worse, I wasn't sure if David even wanted me to fix it. Days passed, and I started to feel the heavy weight of my isolation. The apartment felt so much emptier without David. I found myself standing in places where we had once shared quiet moments, at the kitchen counter where we would laugh over dinner, on the balcony where we would watch the sunset together, and in the living room where we would sit side by side, watching our favorite shows. But now, it all felt like a painful reminder of what I had lost. Every inch of the apartment screamed his absence. I tried to distract myself. I met up with friends, threw myself into work, and spent time with my family. But nothing filled the hole he had left. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the thought of him. His face, his voice, his touch, it was all so vivid in my mind. And the silence between us felt like it was becoming permanent. On the 5th day, I finally reached a breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. The feeling of waiting, of hoping for something that might never come, was slowly eating away at me. So, I picked up my phone and dialed David's number again. My hands shook as I pressed the call button, my heart pounding in my chest. I had called him 100 times before, but this time felt different. It felt like the final chance, the last shot at salvaging whatever was left between us. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before finally, I heard the click of him answering. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. But then, his voice came through the line, sounding tired but still familiar. "Hello," he said softly. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "David. It's me." There was a long pause, and I could hear him exhale slowly. For a moment, it felt like he was debating whether or not to speak, but then he finally broke the silence. "Why are you calling, Claire?" His voice was low, and there was an edge to it, a mix of exhaustion and something I couldn't quite place. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice shaking. "I never meant to hurt you." That comment, it was stupid. I wasn't thinking. I didn't know what I was saying. And now everything feels broken, and I don't know how to fix it. There was silence on the other end of the line again, and my stomach twisted in knots. I thought he was going to hang up. But instead, he spoke again, his voice softer this time. "You hurt me, Claire," he said quietly. Not with just that comment, but with everything. We've been drifting for so long, and I don't know how to get back to what we had. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had known things weren't great, but hearing him say it out loud, hearing the pain in his voice, was something I wasn't prepared for. I know, I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. I've been so caught up in everything else, and I didn't even see it. I didn't see how far apart we were becoming. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Claire, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I'm not sure if I even want to. I felt my heart shatter at those words. For a brief moment, I thought it might be the end of us, of everything. But then, I swallowed hard, my voice gaining strength. Please don't give up on us yet, I said, my voice full of desperation. I know I've messed up, but I love you, David. I don't want to lose you. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing softly on the other end of the line. And for the first time in days, I felt like there was a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. The silence that followed my desperate plea hung in the air, thick and heavy. For what felt like an eternity, there was no answer. My heart pounded in my chest, and I tried to steady my breath. I had finally spoken the words I had been holding back, but now it seemed like they weren't enough. Maybe David needed more. Maybe there was more to say, more I hadn't realized. But then, just as I thought he might hang up, his voice came through again, quieter this time. I don't know, Claire. I really don't know if I can just forget what's happened. But I'm willing to try. My breath caught in my throat. You're willing to try? I repeated, unsure if I had heard him correctly. Yeah, he said, his voice distant but not cold. I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying we can just fix everything with a phone call. But I don't know. Maybe we need time. Maybe we need space to think about everything. I felt a flicker of hope deep within me, but I didn't want to get ahead of myself. Time. Space, I murmured, nodding to myself as if the words made sense. I understand. We've both been so lost in our own worlds, we forgot what we really had. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear the faint sounds of the city in the background, the hum of traffic and distant voices, but it all felt so far away. We were both standing in this uncertain place, not knowing exactly where we were headed, but for the first time in a while, there seemed to be a chance, a small, fragile chance, that we could rebuild something, even if it wasn't the same. I don't know where this is going, David said finally, his voice soft but steady. But I think we need to start being honest with each other again. We've let so many things slip by, so many things we didn't say. Maybe that's why we ended up here. I nodded, the tears threatening to spill again, but I didn't let them fall. This was the beginning. The first step toward something real. I agree, I said, my voice more certain now. We need to talk. Really talk. About everything. Yeah, David replied. And maybe we need to take it slow. Maybe we can't fix it all at once. But I think if we're both willing to try, we can find our way back. For the first time in days, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I knew things weren't going to be magically better overnight. There was so much to unpack, so many mistakes and misunderstandings to address. But just knowing that he was willing to try, that he hadn't completely given up on us, filled me with a sense of relief I hadn't felt in a long time. Thank you, I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. Thank you for being willing to try. I won't let you down. I'm not expecting perfection, Claire, he said, his voice softer now. I just want to see if we can make it through this. Together. And with that, we both hung up, the conversation ending but the journey just beginning. I wasn't sure where it would lead, or if we'd ever be able to fix everything, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I had hope. Real hope. It was the first step, and maybe that was all we needed for now. It had been a few weeks since that phone call, and things between David and I had slowly started to shift. We had both agreed to take things one step at a time, not rushing into anything, but trying to rebuild the trust that had eroded over time. There were still moments of silence, awkwardness, and hesitation, But there was something else too, a glimmer of understanding, a recognition that we both wanted to make this work, even if we didn't always know how. I remember the first time we sat down and really talked about everything that had happened. It wasn't easy, and there were tears on both sides. We said things that were painful, things that we had buried for far too long. But it felt necessary. It felt like we were finally being honest with each other in a way we hadn't been in years. Despite the hard conversations, the weight of the silence that had hung between us was starting to lift. It wasn't perfect, and we weren't perfect, but we were trying. And that was something. Then one day, about a month after that phone call, David texted me. It wasn't a long message, just a simple, "Can we meet? I want to talk." My heart skipped a beat. We had been texting more regularly, but this was different. This felt like something significant. So, I agreed, and we decided to meet at a small cafe downtown, the place where we had spent many afternoons in the early days of our relationship, laughing and talking about everything and nothing. When I arrived, David was already sitting at a table near the window. He looked the same, but there was something different in his eyes, a softness, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. I walked over to him, my nerves fluttering in my stomach, and took a seat. "Hey," he said with a small smile, his voice warm but hesitant. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't know what this meeting was about, but I had a feeling it was something important. David took a deep breath before speaking again. "I've been thinking a lot," he began, his eyes meeting mine. "And I think I've realized something. I don't want to keep living in the past. I don't want to keep holding on to all the things that hurt us. We've been stuck in this cycle of anger and regret for so long, and I don't know if we can change everything overnight. But I do know that I want to try. I want to see where we can go from here. Together." My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. His words hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. He was willing to let go of the pain, to move forward. It felt like a gift, a chance to truly start over. "I'm scared," I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. "Scared of failing again, scared of losing you for good." "I'm scared too," David said quietly. "But I don't want to let fear control us anymore. We've both made mistakes. But if we keep running from them, we'll never move forward." There was a long pause as we sat there, both processing the weight of his words. And then, finally, I nodded. "I want to try too," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "I want to see if we can rebuild what we had. I want to see if we can find something new, something better. I'm willing to fight for it. For us." And in that moment, everything shifted. The past wasn't forgotten, but it didn't have to define us. We had a chance to rebuild, to start again, and for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it was possible. The silence that had once been a barrier between us now felt like the beginning of something new, a chance at healing, at forgiveness, and at love. And I wasn't going to let that chance slip away.